the percentage of the population aged 80 or above has now reached this, kind of remarkable figure now that we haven't seen anywhere in the world before. And again, this kind of sense of panic kicks in whenever we talk about population aging. But the reality, of course, is that, if you're Japanese and you're an older Japanese, this is pretty good news, right? That you're living longer, you're healthier, you're more active, your health insurance has kept you going, the state is behind you. So in many ways, it's actually pretty good news.
Yeah, indeed. In many ways it is, but the problem is there's not only more people over 80, there are more people over 65, which then really puts a strain on the younger generation to keep supporting them financially. Well,
it can be, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt that an aging population brings challenges with it, particularly if you've got pension systems, healthcare systems, social care systems which require tax being paid in, and in order to pay for services and pensions and income protection to be paid out at older ages as well. And yes, it is a challenge. There's no two ways about that. However, on the flip side, we can say that some of these things can be changed, right? That systems can become more efficient. Productivity can increase. Younger people and older people, of course, are more highly educated, are healthier than ever before. So there's still a lot of kind of levers to pull when it comes to dealing with this challenge. And it's like all of these grand challenges that we face at the moment. Yes, it's difficult, but what are you going to do? You can't just kind of, lie flat and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. There's actually plenty of things that we can do to manage this inevitable next stage of the demographic transition.
Yeah, and Japan may be the first to hit it, but it's not only them facing this challenge, it's happening in Europe, it's happening right here in Australia. What sort of budgetary constraints or allowances is the Japanese government making for this?
Well, see, that's the slight tricky issue with Japan. In some ways, they're very well placed to deal with this because they are at the cutting edge of geron technology, for example. They have really excellent healthcare system and health insurance system, diet, exercise, active aging, healthy aging. These are all big issues in Japan, which is precisely why it's in this situation in the first place. On the other hand, of course, as you well know, Japan's public finances are not as brilliant as many other parts of the world. The state of public spending and those kind of macroeconomic challenges which Japan has been going through for many years now, it obviously presents a kind of drag on how it's going to deal with this. And of course, when those figures came out about having the largest percentage of people aged over 80, of course, that is related back to having a low fertility rate for very many years now. So it's not just that people are living longer, but obviously that percentage of older people is increasing very rapidly. And we're not probably going to see a massive change in that direction anytime soon.
Yeah, no, any effort by the government to change that really hasn't been working. Stuart, are we seeing a shift in people leaving rural communities and moving to the cities, so that creates a problem back in those little rural towns where people are left?
Yeah, and that's where actually it becomes much more, I think, much more interesting and much more pressing. That instead of thinking of population aging, or the number of people aged over 80 or aged over 65 as one big kind of amorphous issue, we have to do exactly that and drill down to the local level. So we are seeing across rural Japan, but also across rural, many parts of rural Asia, but then also rural Europe, this combination of rapid population aging with population decline in these rural areas. So therefore, it becomes much harder to provide public services and infrastructure when you have this much smaller, older population and often more vulnerable population scattered around rural areas. Whereas, and this is the kind of unusual thing in Japan, of course, is that you see Japan's the total population is in decline. We can see these tremendous areas of population decline in the rural areas, but the big cities are growing. The big cities, the big conurbations between, everywhere between, Tokyo and Osaka, they're still rapidly growing. It's very difficult to find housing in these cases, but more difficult than ever to find housing. So it's this real split dynamic, which we're seeing in many, many parts of the world now.
Yeah. And are people happier to work longer than they have in the past to sort of manage this issue going forward?
Well, there again, it's always that challenge of the nature of work, right? And how many more years you want to be working doing the particular job that you want to do. In many parts of the world, university professors like me are fighting to work forever, right? Fighting for work to work for years and years and years. Whereas, my late father, who was a butcher, he couldn't wait to be finished. He couldn't wait to retire, right? So, it's very difficult to make these sweeping statements about the nature of work. I think what we should be seeing and what we should be pressing for is that there should be more flexibility in working in later life, right? That the olden days of, you did the one job till your 65th birthday and then you stopped and did nothing for the next 10, 15, 20 years, those days are changing. Those days are nearly gone. And how can we react to that in a better way? By saying that it's not just about working for longer, working until you die. It shouldn't be that at all. We should be able to change your job, to change the nature of work, to change your interaction in the labour market in such a way that it is actually beneficial for everybody, because working in older ages can be beneficial. It can. In Japan, we know there's this huge problem with loneliness in older age, for example. Being active in the labour market or even in the voluntary sector is a hugely important component of mental health and of reducing loneliness, for example.
Yes, indeed. So fascinating challenges ahead. Great to talk as always, Stuart. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, man.